over to Jason Davis to start the presentation. We might as well get going and roll. We'll be here way too long.
Thank you, Porter. I appreciate that. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be with you all. Thanks for having me today. My name is Jason Davis. We're going to start talking a little bit more about AI. And this session really today is getting more into how to start integrating AI into your business workflow, into your business processes, how to start thinking with kind of an AI-first mindset. So we're going to talk through some steps to help you do that. But first, we'll cover a couple of pieces here. So like I said, we're going to talk about a small history of AI and then get into generative AI, talk about what that is, talk about a strategic roadmap, 5 steps that I'll give you that you can take a look at and really look at implementing in your business, and then talk about the importance of responsible AI use. And I'll give you some access to some guidelines, templates that I put together to help you kind of think about, all right, if we're going to use this in our organization where we've got employees, teams of people that might be using AI, what are the guardrails that we're going to give people to really kind of stick within here? So, real quick, mentioned my name is Jason Davis. I'm a leadership development consultant. How I help my clients is really in 3 different ways. So I create custom learning and development programs. I help from a business process and efficiency standpoint, so thinking about simplifying business processes that you might have in operations, call centers, or anything like that, contact centers, and then working with businesses to enhance productivity with artificial intelligence. Prior to doing all of this, I was with Allstate Insurance for 18 years. That's where I spent most of my time in learning and development, some time in customer experience. I did work at the building on 294 before they knocked it down, unfortunately. So I was out of that space for about 11 years. And so just from a community standpoint, I do live just down the road in Buffalo Grove. I'm a very proud member of the Rotary Club in Buffalo Grove, and I'm also a commissioner on our planning and zoning board for the village of Buffalo Grove as well. So just a small piece about me anyway. All right, so artificial intelligence. I've heard a lot about artificial intelligence, especially over the last couple of years. AI has really been around for a very long time. If you go back, you can date back all the way into the 1950s. Is when you start really getting to the first conversations around computers thinking like humans, right? So Alan Turing starts testing machine learning back in 1950. Then in 1956 is when John McCarthy gave the first term or the first title of artificial intelligence, right? So we'll fast forward a little bit through that, but you don't really start to see a lot of this in a consumer-facing place until about 2011, right? When you start to see Watson, that was the first time Watson appeared on Jeopardy. Then in 2014, that's when Alexa came out. The little puck or the cylinder that you might have sitting on your coffee table that's still listening to every single thing you talk about today. And we're okay with that. I don't know, we just seem to be okay with that. We've progressed a little bit. So then in 2020, you start getting into the first GPT tools that are being created. Now at this point, still very developer facing, right? So not a lot of public or consumer facing activity in the AI or GPT space. Not until November of 2022. And that's when ChatGPT came out, or OpenAI just kind of dropped it on our laps, right? And it came out very non-traditional. I always feel like a lot of big technology like this many times comes through businesses and the places that we work, and that's a lot of times how we get exposed to it, or through school or anything like that. This is completely different. It just came out to the public, free access, here you go. They later started a paid model, but it was just there, right? You could go to chatgpt.com and start. So it was a very just kind of grassroots, ground roots way of getting that activity going. But just again, to kind of point out, we've been experiencing this technology for a while. But what we've really been seeing over the past couple of years, like I said, is generative AI. And generative AI is really focusing on a form of artificial intelligence that is used to generate content. That content can be videos, it can be pictures, it can be music, it can be different types of audio. We'll check out a few examples here. All right, so you've probably all seen something like this. This is just a very simple LinkedIn post I actually had created in ChatGPT. I was talking about a webinar I was going to be on, and I just wanted to promote something or put something out there promotional. So I gave it a little bit of details about the webinar, asked it or gave it some context of what I was trying to focus on. I want people to sign up for the webinar, and it created the text for me. You can also do AI-generated images. So here we are at Tonality. I created this to go. It looks a little similar. I don't know. We'll see. But this is us meeting today at Tonality. You can do AI-generated videos as well. So this is this different version of this presentation from an AI-generated video as well.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that's been generating a ton of buzz: AI for small business growth.
So I
We'll be
uploaded
drawing
this
insights from a
presentation
titled
into a tool, and it created a 25-minute podcast that goes over and summarizes the presentation.
And we'll
So I'm going
also
to
be
sit down, I'm
tackling
going to eat
some
my lunch, and you guys
fascinating
can just listen to this for the rest of the time, right? All right.
You know, AI isn't just for those big tech giants anymore. It's
So that sounded actually pretty good. In that, if I let it go on a little bit, it's actually a two-way conversation between a man and a woman, and they're just kind of going back and forth, bouncing and talking about the presentation, talking about some of the highlights, and things like that. So, and that's just, I just uploaded these slides and said, hey, I want to generate this and direct it towards small business owners. And that's the output. So that's using Google's Notebook LM was the tool that I used to do that. Super fascinating. But the point really here is that obviously there's a lot of different ways that AI has kind of come into our space, and there's a lot of different ways that it can be used personally and professionally, right? I think a lot of times when I see AI things being shown or AI marketing out there, it's very like shiny object. But I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with that, right? Like, how do I start to think about how am I going to monetize that or make myself more efficient or more productive with something like that? So that's the point of what we're trying to get at here today is walking through a little bit of that. So McKinsey did some research last year, and this is some updated research from 2023, but basically 65% or 2/3 of the companies or individuals that they had surveyed at that point had at least one area of their company that was formally using generative AI, not just kind of playing around or anything like that, but like formally using it as a part of their strategy. So and that was up from 33% in the year before. So there's been a lot of just usage growth. Like I said, a lot of testing, but then a lot of formality coming with this as well. So I'm interested in hearing a little bit what you all are seeing though. What are you seeing in your industries and the way that you're working in the spaces that you're in? What are you seeing with AI? Yeah.
Well, I didn't, but I had to write some JS and JavaScript.
Okay.
As my client and my CRM wanted geolocation. When the sales rep goes around and the boss doesn't trust the sales rep actually getting the location they say they're in, so it'll pull the browser request, IP address, reverse map the city and state, and then update the form without the end user interacting with it. And it wrote it, the script, and GPT told me what data source to use. It was called like Open Data or something like that. And you can get a free version of that, and I got that problem solved in 2 hours for a request.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I found that GPT or Gemini and a lot of these tools are fantastic at writing code. I don't know how to write code at all, but I'm using Python code and things like that straight out of ChatGPT, and then I'm saying, all right, I don't know what to do with this. Give me step-by-step instructions now on what I need to do, and it'll roll you through that. And I'm running things automatically now once a week that I used to spend hours doing and stuff like that. Yeah, John.
We used to actually outsource our scripting and coding and stuff. We do a lot of automations where we have to, at scale, make adjustments and do different things with client computers. And a lot of that we used to outsource. I'm pretty good at like hacking together a script. Like I'm not a scripter, but I can usually figure it out. But now being able to use a lot of these tools makes it a ton easier. I can kind of tell it what I want to do and say, okay, this isn't working, fix it, and it fixes it. And I obviously, before running anything on client computers, we vet everything and test everything internally. But it's been a game changer for us in that we don't have to outsource that and hire that out. And then sometimes, that's the technical side, but on the not so technical side, sometimes I'll be late in the day writing an email and I'll be rereading the email and I'll be looking at it going, this just isn't great. This is rambling on and it's just not great. So I'll dump it into GPT and let it rewrite it for me. And a lot of times it comes out with some better things, picks out some points that I was not so specific on and makes them sound better. So we've been using it a lot in our business. It's been really helpful.
Yeah.
One of the areas we specialize in is healthcare financing, and I do social media posts, so I was looking for a doctor paying bills, and I couldn't find a stock photo anywhere, so I went into ChatGPT and asked for that, and lo and behold, I found a doctor paying bills.
And that's an amazing way to do it, right? Getting rid of having to pay for all these places to do stock photos and stuff like. Just go create your own, you know. So yeah, Lena.
But what's also great about AI, at least currently, is we have a database that we use. It is all fair use, images in that database, and we use that database. People can look up whatever they like, and then there's also the AI aspect of it, where you can take a photo that you find through the database and ask the AI to just change something about it. And then the AI does that, and now you have that perfect image that you were thinking in your head that you want to hang up on the wall at your home. And you can just give that image to us. We print it out and we put it up on the wall. It helps the customer be happy and get exactly what they were thinking, but it also helps us, we don't have to outsource for, an artist or, a photographer to go find this very specific thing in nature. It also saves our printer and Photoshop expert Paige a lot of time. So that way she doesn't have to Photoshop all of these images, and she can, have a little bit of a break and focus on other things that AI can't necessarily do.
Yeah, that's great. And Lena and I were talking just before lunch, actually, and because one of the unique things about this site that she was talking about is a lot of the AI, the image generation sites out there, they don't allow you to upload your own photo and then modify or enhance that. They'll create something new for you, but you a lot of times can't upload your own photo or a photo that you've taken from somewhere, as you can imagine, for a lot of reasons probably, and then modify it. But that's a solution where it's like, I just want to look at different photography or different images, and I really like that, but I'd love for it to have snow or something like that, right? And you have like the options to modify that a little bit. Yeah, that's great. This year? Yeah.
Say, sometimes I just have a conversation with it. I'm slow going in the mornings.
Yeah.
Like I need a couple cups of caffeine before I get going. So I'll say, let's be real, voice over IP phones are not the most interesting and exciting hosts that you're going to see out there. So I will start with ChatGPT and just say, what are some cool features about voice over IP phone? I'll list out like 15 of them, and I'll say, okay, I like this feature, let's go on with that one. And then I'll focus in on that and give me some more ideas. And I'll say, I like this part of it, but can you change this? And we keep going back. I say we as if it's another person, but that's how I treat it, where it just goes back and forth until I find something that I'm like, that's what I need.
Yeah, it's like having a friend that you can just call up and nerd out over voice over IP, right? Like whoever thought you would have that person in your life. So. Right? Yeah. He's like, wait a minute here. Yeah. We'll do one more, Bill.
But I tried using it with writing the book, and I didn't like it at all. Sure. A, because I didn't really know what I was doing, and B, I didn't like what it did and what I was doing. It very personalized what I was trying to put together. But there's an art to it. You have to learn how to use it, and that can be frustrating. I gave up. Forget it, I'm writing the whole thing, and I'm glad I did, because I learned if you have more than 10% of AI in the book, you won't get it published.
Okay.
But but get through the frustration, and I haven't yet, but just for those of you who are still just starting out, there's an art to it, there's a challenge.
Yeah, and we touch on that a little bit here, so that's a great way to segue a little bit. So thank you all for those examples. It's a really good, broad use and good way to kind of keep our perspective on. There's a lot of different ways that we can all use this, and I think it's about having that like AI first mindset, right? Like how could I use AI to solve this problem instead of Google or instead of calling up somebody or something like that? How can I kind of think that way? So right now what I want to walk through is really kind of 5 ways that I mentioned I feel like that really help enable organizations, whether you're a single person business or a business with multiple teams, 200, 500 people, a really good way to start to think about how do we integrate AI into our business and using it in the right way, right? So 5 steps to that. 1, taking a look at how ready you are as an organization. And Bill just kind of gets into some of the training aspects of it, knowledge, where you're at. The 2nd, start thinking about some simple use cases. 3rd, identifying, well, if we're going to do something here, how do we know if it's working? How will we know, right? So what are your success metrics? Thinking about those, testing out small pilot projects, identifying those and scaling those when they work. So we'll walk through these step by step. First off here. So really in that first step, it hits into 3 areas, and it's for the most part, it's about skills, right? Skills, and we'll get into a little bit of technology, but it's really about the skills that you have, or that your organization have, or the people in your organization have, right? You know, Bill said he probably didn't know what he was doing too much, didn't want to take on the time to learn it. But I think at that point you just said, hey, I don't want to use this tool, I'm going to do my own thing. But if you are looking to do more with AI, or you are looking to integrate it more into your organization, I implore you, do some learning on it. I know it's very, very easy to get out there, get started, and get going, but take an hour, take a couple of hours, take a prompting class. They call it prompt engineering, but they make it sound a lot, and I say they, but the marketing of it makes it sound a lot more complicated than it is, right? It's really just how to prompt and use these large language models to get better results faster, right? So how do you structure a prompt, using specific things like context, tone, really indicating the things that you want. Do a little bit of learning there, and you'll go a long way. Thinking about, if you're onboarding or bringing new people into your organization, what skill sets do you need now? Do you want them to already have AI skill sets? Are you able or ready to provide or give them those skill sets when they get into your organization? And what does that look like next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Because this skill set is starting to leak its way into education, right? You're starting to see more and more college courses on AI. You're starting to see high school courses on AI. There are business labs in high schools that are encouraging AI use, so it's starting to kind of take root in those places. And now people coming into the workforce these days are going to already have these skills that are ready to go. So make sure you're taking advantage of learning opportunities, and make sure you're giving those to your employees if you've got employees as well. So expose those opportunities. There's a lot of information out on LinkedIn Learning. There's courses and a program called Coursera as well that you can get in there. It's a very cheap online learning option that's out there. So I encourage you to take on different opportunities to learn. Take a look at what you need from a technology standpoint. If you're wanting it to use AI to do something specific, what kind of tools might you need to do that, right? Are there programs, are there specific AI tools that handle that specific use case for you? Do you have that? Something to think about is, a lot of these tools today, like CRMs, Canva, things like that, they already have AI components built into them, or they're starting to integrate more of those. So really take a look at the things you're paying for already and see what capabilities they're adding, right? Don't go out and buy something else because you may already be paying for that feature in a platform you're already using. So keep that in mind as well. And then, like I said, thinking about your job descriptions. If you are in a position where you're hiring people or bringing people onto a team, what do those job descriptions look like today? What do they need to look like in the next few years for you? All right, so as we get a little bit more into the training of this here, so of the employees that are using artificial intelligence on the job, 47%, or we'll just call it half, say that their companies have not given them any training on how to use it at work at all. So you've got half of the people out there just doing whatever they want without any kind of training, without any kind of knowledge, without any kind of guidelines on how to use it. And I kind of compare this to training with Excel, right? You can open up Excel, never having used it before. You can probably enter some data. You might be able to create a chart, something like that. But to get really advanced, start doing more advanced formulas, things like that, if you took just an hour course or you sat down with somebody and watched them work in Excel for an hour, you'd be much more advanced in that tool than you would be just kind of opening it and start it. It's the same thing here. If you just watch somebody prompt for an hour, you're going to pick up a lot. You're going to pick up a lot of, oh, I didn't know you could do that, or oh, I didn't think of doing that or asking it that. That's probably the number one thing that I see when I tell people, here's how I used AI, or here's what I've done. Or number one thing I hear is, oh, well, I didn't even think of that, right? It's that didn't even think to use AI in that way, and I think that's where there's a lot of this training will show you those other avenues that are out there. All right, so the second step here is really thinking about what are those high impact use cases? And you can really kind of zone this in or zoom this into things that you're spending a lot of time on a regular basis. So what are those annoying things that I hate doing every day, that I hate doing every week, that me or my team, we're spending a lot of time just recapturing, putting data in different places or anything like that, generating new content, creating podcasts, anything like that that's out there. What are those things that are really taking up my time that I'm okay kind of outsourcing to artificial intelligence, or at least giving 80% of that to artificial intelligence? Those are the things you're going to get the best kind of impact out of, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But obviously there's a few spaces you could use it. We talked about those here in the room, but from a customer service standpoint, can you review any of your client reviews, your customer reviews, anything like that? How do you build like a sentiment analysis, using these tools if you're uploading that data? From an operations standpoint, if you're trying to operationalize or optimize any schedules, if you want to, again, take a look at what kind of data you've got coming in from a call structure, or if you've got a customer service perspective where you're looking at emails coming into a group, things like that. You can take a look at different data points there. And then marketing, right? We've talked, that's probably one of the bigger examples you see these days is different pieces of content, social media, things like that, being created and put out from a marketing perspective. And the way you want to think about this really is thinking about feasibility of these projects. Do we have the resources that we need to do something like this? And then again, that impact. So finding those things that are taking up a lot of your time that you'd really like to find a way to automate or just get out of your way, but still accomplish on a regular basis. All right. Third, you want to identify your success metrics. Because if you're going to do all this, how do you know if it's making an impact at all? Right? So start thinking about, all right, if we're going to implement, if we're going to start writing, customer response emails using ChatGPT, what should we see on the other end, right? Is that returning customers? Is that increased satisfaction? What is it that we're looking to get back on the other side? And the better you can tie that to like real dollars in your organization, the more likely you're going to be to get any kind of real traction or understanding of how this is really making an impact. Right, so a few different examples there, right? If you're looking at revenue growth, increasing sales by X%, operational efficiency, decreasing turnover, reducing cycle time, things like that. What are those hard numbers that you can really start to chase after and say, all right, I can see the needle moving, I understand we're making a difference. All right, step 4, and this is probably my most important point anyway, but it's really thinking that start small. Start small, thinking about those projects that maybe will impact you or a couple people in your organization. Again, you want to pick a problem that's causing a lot of headache or a lot of pain, but identify what could be some quick wins. What are some things that we might be able to do very, very quickly without a major investment in AI platforms or systems or anything like that, that will enable us to understand, all right, this is how this could work, and this is where we could see business going or how this can change our business. What I hate to see is, again, this kind of marketing blitz of all these different AI tools and platforms that can do these various things with artificial intelligence, and then people going out and buying more and more and more, just signing up for more and more subscriptions, because it's super easy to do. But a lot of these platforms are so broad these days that they're kind of starting to cross over and they're offering the same features without you really realizing it, right? So taking a look, again, back at step 1, taking a look at what you've bought already and seeing, all right, what are the full capabilities of this and the access or the level of access that I've purchased here. I'll put we'll go 80%. That if you've got any kind of like software as a service platform or anything like that, they've got some kind of AI component built in by now. It may be garbage, but there's some kind of AI component built into it now. I'd encourage you to check it out if you've got access to it. Like I said, some are better than others, but check it out in that space that you're already working within. All right, and then finally, you just really want to look at, again, you know what your success metrics are, you've been looking at your pilot program, you've been running that, what's working, what's not, how do you start to identify and document and scale what's working, okay? So you're trying out different things. If you're writing different pieces of content and you know it's working on Facebook, it's like, okay, well, this is the one channel I've been using for my AI content. Now I want to start using it to write on Twitter or X or whatever. How do you start converting that over, right? How do you start to scale into, all right, now I can take off the load of having to write these on my own and do all of that and use AI to do that. So how do you kind of scale what you're doing in that small way in a way that it allows you to really kind of expand AI into your business and integrate it into your workflow. All right, so before we get into talking about any responsible AI use, what questions do you have about kind of that roadmap or those 5 steps? I know we went through it a little quickly, but is anybody anywhere in there? Like, have they started kind of testing things in their organization? I know we've talked about some folks dabbling with it.
I've heard people that have had nightmarish problems trying to use it, and then they don't proofread it, and it goes out wrong. Is there any better way other than watching what your dialogue is going out?
So I always tell people and the clients that I work with that there's always a human in the loop. And that's part of the guidelines that I talk about here in a little bit too. If you are within your organization, you're going to say, hey, all right, we're going to use AI. We know we're going to do it as an organization, but here are the rules that you're going to do, or here's the rules that you're going to kind of follow within that. Part of that would be nothing goes out, nothing hits public, nothing hits customer, unless like somebody's eyes went across it, right? I have it in a longer version of this presentation, but there's some other research that came from McKinsey. They did a lot of research around negative implications or negative impacts from the use of AI. What can you guess was the -- negative implication or negative impact, or I guess use of AI?
Too much crappy content.
Yeah, misinformation. It basically just categorized misinformation or wrong information. It totally hallucinated something, which that's its job, is to create things. It may not be right, but its job is to create things, and that's where that human in the loop always has to stay. So I think that's a great question, and you really are running a big risk of.
As far as websites, I beg of you, not let it write your website for you. Google does not like it. It will de-index your site. You have to run it through a lot of times. I have clients give me content for their website, and I already know it's completely ChatGPT. I still run it through an AI checker, and it's 95% or more AI. There's no reason to spend the amount of money you're spending for a website if you're just going to get it de-indexed immediately. So it has to be real content that is real and relevant content. It's not just relevant anymore, real content. To make the words on your particular web pages your words.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because I think over time, you're going to have different organizations, different platforms, and then even through social media, going to start evaluating that content differently. And if they can tell, again, oh, this is AI content, or I've seen 30 different iterations of this same content, because there's a lot of different people out there talking about the same thing, well, I'm just going to just kind of descale this or just kind of dampen it so that it doesn't get the impressions or the take that you want. So I do think you're absolutely right. As time goes on, you're going to see more and more limitation of that kind of content, probably from a marketing standpoint, get out there. So.
Yeah, 2 things. I was at another presentation on AI with about 80 people from the healthcare field. Over half of them were using it in some form at work. But the gentleman that was doing the presentation, he said, before you go out and pay a lot for different AI tools, probably you can do a lot for free. Look at the free version first. And then the other thing I would mention, since we got some people in education in the room, I know an English teacher from a high school, and she got a paper from a student who did the paper, had AI do the paper. And yes, she was able to see that. And the student failed. Because they used AI to do the paper, and they didn't do the paper.
To jump on that education, I was listening to a podcast for my kids' school, and they were talking about AI. And it was interesting to hear the school board's viewpoints for the pros of AI, and how, they may have, 50, 100 students, and they can't grade all these papers that are 10 pages each. They might be able to get 1 page done, but they can provide their students with an AI tool. They can run their paper through it, and it can give them feedback on how to correct it. So it really does help the teachers enable the kids too. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. They said AI is not going away. So.
Yeah, I heard that as well, and I loved it because, I mean, with teachers and growing classrooms and things like that, for them to really be able to give, and I think part of it was, the first 10 or so papers I grade, they get awesome feedback, but after that, I'm just done, right? And I just kind of want to be done, So the longer you go on, the less and less that feedback gets, and that's where people really start to grow, is when they are told, like, hey, if you would have done this a little bit differently or this better, it would have been a better grade. So yeah, that's a great way of just kind of machine learning, right? Processing those papers and being able to give feedback.
Okay, I didn't hear everything that Jeff said, but if more and more you use AI as a writing tool, does it intuitively mimic more of the way you write?
So I can, a lot of them do this now. I can answer more for ChatGPT because that's what I use most often. If you are logged in to ChatGPT and you have the memory feature enabled in settings, it will keep record of not everything, but particular things that you might ask or prompt or look at or get in responses, and it'll store that. And so, the more and more you go on, or if you're asking for things that come back in a particular style or tone, it'll memorize that you usually ask for that, and it'll start to craft your prompts or craft your output in that way. So it'll, so the more, and I think Gemini and Claude and a lot of these probably do this by now, but the more you use it, the more it'll become more of probably what you're looking for, if that makes sense. It'll learn more about what you're trying to get out of it and its endpoint. And also within ChatGPT, and I think you can do this in Gemini, you can provide a set of instructions to the overall program. So if you're logged in, you go to your user settings, I think it's under memorization or personalization, you can actually provide a set of instructions. You can tell it what to call you, you can give it a tone, you can give it certain particular pieces of content around or context around what you do, and it'll kind of have those instructions for every single chat that you begin with inside of ChatGPT. So it's a nice way to kind of get into a persona very, very quickly. So.
I think that's $20, all the $20 here, right? Just have to put it in projects. See, a project, I want to do this project, I want to keep this tone all the way through the project. And it goes back and remembers everything. So if I want to do a series of web pages, SEO optimization, I can kind of keep that theme going without knowing exactly what to do. And for $20, I mean, it's
So the other one is that you can submit, I think in most of them, like a writing sample. And then there are ways that you can, I'm trying to remember, but there are like 20 different tonal indicators that you could say, okay, identify these are the types of things I want to have in my writing. And so you kind of create it as a map for it to follow, to be able to use that when, how do you typically write? Use bold words that are like really important, or like how do you say certain things, and it will take these indicators based on another writing that you think is a good representation of your writing, and then it can just use that tone moving forward.
Yeah, and so one of my favorite things to do actually, and I found that ChatGPT is actually very, very wordy, very verbose. So I actually ask it to rewrite things at like a 6th grade reading level or a 10th grade, because I'm just trying to get it to minimize the amount of words. And I want you to use very, very simple language, right? Because it uses a lot of different words and language that are very complex or make writing just very hard to read. So I just want very, very simple text, very, very simple language. For you marketers in the room, I think you're supposed to write your marketing content at like a 5th grade level or a 6th grade level, something like that, right? So a 5th grader could read it back to you or tell you what your business is. So that's been very, very powerful for me in that way. So we'll talk a couple minutes about responsible AI use. What a lot of organizations may be doing, if they're not doing any training, they're probably not also doing any kind of guidelines or parameters around how they want employees to be using AI. This probably sounds a little counterintuitive, right? Or we're going to put in restrictions on people, or we're going to ask them to stop using it. It's not. That's actually the opposite of this, and the opposite of what I've experienced with some of my clients. Because when my clients give their employees guidelines around, here's how we will use AI, here's what I'm telling you, yes, I want you to use AI for this, but don't for this, and here's how we're going to do it in this organization, so many people feel much, much better about actually using it and actually talking to other people about how they're using it and sharing what they're doing and saying, oh, I did this, and here's how I got this, right? And just exactly as we did earlier here in the room, if you don't enable that kind of open wall part of your organization, if you don't enable people to use something with approval and then share what's working, they're just going to use it in silos. And then you're going to have people, exploring things on their own, maybe that they're not supposed to, or using tools that they're on their own not supposed to. I've talked to a number of employees that their organization restricts them completely from using large language models, ChatGPT, Copilot, or anything like that. They're using it on their phone, copying it, and then sending it to themselves through their phone, to their email, so they're like going through hoops to use it. So think about that. They're using it, even though they're not supposed to, they're using it, but keep that in mind. But these guidelines are something that can really help enable people and think clearly about, all right, this is an easy way to do that. So I put together a template that's probably way longer than you would need, which is fine. Take away things that you don't want, but look at it and say, all right, this is something that's going to be useful. So if you want to scan that, I'll send a link out to it as well afterwards. You can go out, download it. It is in a Word document, I believe, so it's totally customizable. Do what you want with it from there. Like I said, it's probably more in depth than what you need for your org, but that's fine. Take away what you don't need out of it. So real quick, again, just kind of thinking about 5 ways that you can start to think about doing this today, right? When I start leaving here today, here's some things that I can start doing. So start looking at your business, your organization. What do we have going on? What does my technology allow me to do? From an AI perspective, what am I paying for? What is it giving me access today? And what kind of skills do we need to build or gain inside of our organization? Is there a simple class that you can take? Like I said, there's Coursera that's out there. I think there's I don't have it, I think learnprompting.org is another, it might be learningprompting.org, something like that. But they've got a free course out there as well that you can take. And there's free stuff out on LinkedIn Learning also that you can take advantage of. If you don't want to pay for LinkedIn Learning, a lot of libraries actually allow you to access it with a library card. So if you got that, and then some Coursera is accessible through some libraries as well. So check with your library and see what they might have going on. But again, free, right? Let's back to your point over here. Let's try to find free ways to learn, free ways to use these tools, and then there's like, oh, I really like that feature, but I can only get more of it if I pay $20 a month. Well, then go pay the $20 a month. But find stuff that's free, find things and test those free things first, and then figure out where you want to go from there. Again, thinking about your pilot projects, how do you want to prioritize those? What's really annoying in your business? What are the things you'd love to just automate or find a way to have a robot or a machine take care of for you? Think about those guidelines. How do we want to use it in our organization? Even if you're a solo, independent business person, thinking about, all right, here are the things that I want to use it for in my business. And then, like Bill, he's saying, all right, I'm not going to use it to write my content or my material. I don't want to do that. That is wonderful. You're creating that space for you to say, all right, I may do it for this, but I'm not going to do it for that. That's a great thing to do. Think about doing that even if you're an independent business person. And then if you are an organization where you've got teams or multiple people or got some breadth to yourself, think about those cross-functional teams that may be doing different AI projects or AI pilots or anything like that as well, and how you might be able to integrate that into your larger plan. So, and so this quote that I found, I really appreciate this quote because it kind of gets back to what I mentioned earlier, right? So it's great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together, right? And so that's back to that, think small. What are those small, impactful projects in your organization that you can start to say, okay, these are the things that we can look at and start to impact from an AI standpoint, or that I would like to take care of or get moved out of our way. All right, so we got a couple minutes. What questions do you have before we close up here today? Yeah.
So I've been coding for about 15 years now. I use Copilot now.
Okay.
It helps me a lot to work faster and deliver features more efficiently. One of the things that I'm a little worried about is new developers too dependent on software. And when I interview them, if you ask them to turn it off, especially the new grads, they can't write a lot of code. So my question is, how do you find that balance between using the tool and not need to depend on it? Or maybe it's okay to use it.
No, I think that's a great question, and it gets back to your point as well. I think the balance really comes in like domain expertise, right? Do I have the expertise to know if this is good or bad code? And that's really that decision point, right? Because I'm using it to automate some things that I'm doing. I couldn't tell you if it's good or bad or not, right? I'm just hoping it works. And then when it doesn't work, I have to paste the error message back into ChatGPT and say, well, this is what it gave me, and then how do I fix this, right? Exactly, right? And I'm doing like very simplistic things, and nobody's paying me for that. But you're trying to hire people or do business, right? I do think there is a certain amount of domain expertise that you're going to still need people to have to judge good and bad, right? Until we feel comfortable with AI saying, all right, this is good code or bad code, or I've seen enough output from an AI tool to know that, all right, 99.9% of the time it's something good, then I can trust it. But I do think for a while, like I said, it's what's that human in the loop look like? You're going to need some bit of domain expertise to know good, bad, wrong, right? How do I fix something quickly and get into there? So I don't know that we've passed that yet. So, which is a good thing for all of us here. We still got to have what we know and what makes us unique.
I tell people to use it and how I use it, just use it as an assist. You can't think of that word, that mind code is just something's off with it, you can't figure it out. But if you don't know the pieces of what you're doing, like the grads are coming in and they're from AI, it's terrifying. But it means that works for us. But I think you just use it as an assist. It's going to be your assistant, and it's extremely helpful. But there's no way at this point, I don't see it ongoing that you're going to get away from that human touch at all.
Yeah, I think right now the common misconception is, oh, I can go use this tool and it'll give me something completely polished, finished, and done in minutes, right? And that's just not the reality of it. It'll give you something, and you can use it as that finished thing, but it's probably not going to be what you really want it to be. It might take you from 0 to 60, from 0 to 70, from 0 to 80% done. But you're still going to have to do a little bit of work, a little bit of legwork on your own to really kind of make it what you want it to be, to know that everything is accurate, and to just be comfortable with what you're putting out in front of people.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. All right, thank you.